The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly as Jack, a 35-year-old Marine Corps veteran, trudged along the dusty sidewalk. His shoulders, once squared with pride, now sagged under the invisible weight of his memories. The cheerful laughter of children playing in a nearby park pierced through his thoughts, a stark contrast to the darkness that clouded his mind. As Jack walked, his mind drifted back to the scorching sands of Afghanistan. The vivid flashback hit him like a shockwave. The deafening explosion, the acrid smell of burning metal, and the agonizing cries of his best friend, Mike. In that moment, Jack had lost not only a brother in arms but also a piece of himself. The memory faded, leaving him standing still on the sidewalk, his hands trembling slightly. Across the street, Sarah, a local photographer in her late 20s, lowered her camera. There was something about his demeanor, the way he walked, the distant look in his eyes, that spoke volumes. Sarah found herself drawn to this stranger's story, sensing a depth of experience etched into the lines of his face. As Jack resumed his journey, Sarah made a silent decision. She would find a way to learn more about this man, to understand the weight he carried. Little did she know that this moment of curiosity would set in motion a chain of events that would not only change Jack's life, but also impact an entire community. The contrast between the lively park and Jack's solitary figure created a poignant scene. It was a visual representation of the isolation many veterans feel upon returning home, surrounded by the life they fought to protect, yet somehow disconnected from it. As Sarah watched Jack disappear around a corner, she felt a spark of determination. She was about to embark on a journey of her own, one that would bridge the gap between a struggling veteran and a community capable of healing. Over the next few weeks, Sarah began to time her visits to the park to coincide with Jack's daily walk. At first, she kept her distance, observing him from afar and occasionally snapping a discreet photo. She noticed the regularity of his route, the determined set of his jaw, and the way his eyes rarely lifted from the ground. One particularly hot afternoon, Sarah decided to make her move. As Jack passed by, she fell into step beside him, offering a bottle of water and a friendly smile. "Looks like you could use this," she said. Jack's initial reaction was one of surprise and suspicion. He mumbled a gruff thanks but kept walking, his stride unbroken. Undeterred, Sarah continued her efforts. Each day, she would walk a little further with Jack, gradually breaking through his shell with her persistent kindness. At first, their conversations were one-sided, with Sarah chatting about the weather, the neighborhood, or her photography. Jack would respond with nods or monosyllabic answers, but Sarah sensed that beneath his tough exterior, he was listening. It wasn't until their 10th encounter that Jack finally opened up. As they passed the park, the sound of a car backfiring caused Jack to flinch visibly. Sarah gently placed a hand on his arm, her touch anchoring him to the present. In that moment of vulnerability, Jack looked at her and saw not pity, but genuine concern. "I served 2 tours in Afghanistan," he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. Sometimes it's hard to leave it behind." Sarah's heart swelled with empathy. She had suspected Jack was a veteran, but hearing him confirm it only strengthened her resolve to help. As they continued walking, Jack slowly began to share more about his experiences, the camaraderie he missed, the struggles of civilian life, and the long journey to his minimum wage job at an electronics store. Inspired by Jack's story and moved by his daily 20-mile walk to work, Sarah knew she had to do more. That night, she sat at her computer, staring at the photos she had taken of Jack. His strong profile against the setting sun, the determined set of his shoulders as he walked. These images told a story of resilience and struggle. With a deep breath, Sarah began to craft a social media post, sharing Jack's story and calling attention to the often invisible battles fought by veterans in their own communities. Sarah's post about Jack's daily journey struck a chord with people across the country. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times, with comments pouring in from veterans, their families, and civilians alike. Many expressed admiration for Jack's perseverance, while others shared their own stories of post-service struggles. The local news caught wind of the story, and soon Jack found himself at the center of unexpected attention. At first, he was overwhelmed and slightly uncomfortable with the spotlight. He had never sought recognition for his service or his current situation. However, as messages of support and understanding flooded in, Jack began to feel a shift in his perspective. One evening, as Jack returned home from his long day of work and walking, he found an envelope taped to his apartment door. Inside was a collection of heartfelt letters from strangers who had been touched by his story. Some were from fellow veterans who saw their own struggles reflected in Jack's journey. Others were from civilians who wanted to express their gratitude for his service and their desire to help. Along with the letters was a substantial amount of cash, donations from people who had been moved by his daily 20-mile trek to work. Jack sat on his worn couch, hands shaking as he read through the messages. For the first time in years, he felt a warmth spreading through his chest, melting the ice of isolation that had encased his heart. One letter, in particular, caught his attention. It was from a young girl named Emily, who had emptied her piggy bank to contribute to the fund. She wrote, "Dear Mr. Jack, I hope this money helps you get a car. My grandpa was a soldier too, and he always said that no one who fights for our country should have to fight alone when they come home. You're not alone anymore." As Jack read Emily's words over and over, tears he had held back for years finally began to fall. The kindness of strangers, sparked by Sarah's simple act of sharing his story, had cracked open a door he thought had been permanently sealed. For the first time since returning home, Jack felt a glimmer of hope, a feeling that perhaps he wasn't as alone as he had believed. With the unexpected windfall from the community's generosity, Jack found himself at a crossroads. After careful consideration, he decided to use the money to purchase a reliable used car, a decision that would dramatically change his daily routine and open up new possibilities. The day Jack drove his new car to work for the first time was a milestone. The feeling of independence and the extra hours in his day gave him a renewed sense of energy and purpose. No longer exhausted from his long walks, Jack found himself more engaged at work and even started to form friendships with his coworkers. His improved performance didn't go unnoticed. When a position opened up in the store's repair department, Jack's manager encouraged him to apply. The job would utilize the mechanical skills he had honed during his time in the Marines, working on military vehicles. After a successful interview, Jack found himself with a promotion and a substantial pay raise. As his professional life improved, Jack began to feel a stirring of ambition he hadn't experienced in years. He started to research night classes at the local community college, considering the possibility of pursuing a degree in engineering. The discipline and problem-solving skills he had developed in the military translated well to his studies, and Jack found himself excelling in ways he never thought possible. Despite these positive changes, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that there was more he could be doing. The outpouring of support he had received made him acutely aware of how many other veterans were struggling in silence. He thought about the friends he had lost, both on the battlefield and to the invisible wounds of war after returning home. One night, as Jack was working late at the electronics store, a fellow veteran came in looking for help with a broken laptop. As they talked, Jack realized that this man was going through many of the same struggles he had faced. Without hesitation, Jack shared his own story and offered words of encouragement. The interaction left a profound impact on Jack. He realized that his experiences, both the hardships and the recent turnaround, could be valuable to others. It was then that Jack decided he needed to find a way to give back, to help other veterans who were still fighting their own daily battles. With this new sense of purpose, Jack began to research local veteran support groups and organizations, determined to find a way to make a difference. Driven by his newfound sense of purpose, Jack sought out a local veterans support group. The first meeting he attended was eye-opening. As he listened to the stories shared by other veterans, Jack was struck by how familiar they sounded. The struggles with PTSD, the difficulty in finding meaningful employment, the feeling of disconnection from civilian life. These were challenges he knew all too well. One veteran's story, in particular, resonated deeply with Jack. Mike, a young Army veteran who had served in Iraq, spoke about his difficulty in adjusting to civilian life and his feelings of isolation. Jack saw in Mike a reflection of his younger self, struggling to find his place in a world that seemed to have moved on without him. After the meeting, Jack approached Mike and shared his own journey. He talked about the dark times, the daily struggles, and the unexpected turn his life had taken, thanks to the kindness of strangers and the support of the community. Jack saw a glimmer of hope in Mike's eyes, the same spark that had been ignited in him not so long ago. Inspired by this connection, Jack reached out to the group's organizer and offered to become more involved. He proposed starting a mentorship program, pairing older veterans with younger ones who were still finding their footing. The idea was met with enthusiasm, and soon Jack found himself working alongside mental health professionals and social workers to develop a structured program. He found that sharing his experiences and offering guidance not only helped these younger vets, but also continued his own healing process. Each success story, each small step forward taken by his mentees, felt like a personal victory for Jack. As word of the program spread, more veterans came forward, both to seek help and to offer their support. Jack's initiative had tapped into a well of shared experience and mutual understanding that many had been yearning for. The program began to expand, offering not just emotional support, but also practical assistance with job searches, educational opportunities, and navigating the often complex world of veteran benefits. Through his work with the mentorship program, Jack discovered a talent for public speaking. He began to be invited to local schools and community events to share his story and raise awareness about veterans' issues. Each time he spoke, Jack felt a piece of his old confidence returning, tempered now with wisdom and empathy. As the program grew, Jack realized that he had found more than just a way to give back. He had found a new mission. The sense of purpose that had eluded him since leaving the Marines was now crystal clear. By helping other veterans navigate their return to civilian life, Jack was not only honoring the memory of those he had served with, but also forging a new path forward for himself and others like him. With the mentorship program flourishing, Jack felt compelled to do even more. He remembered the sense of accomplishment and purpose he had felt working on vehicles during his time in the Marines. This sparked an idea. What if he could combine his mechanical skills with his desire to help fellow veterans? Jack approached his manager at the electronics store with a proposal. He wanted to use the store's unused warehouse space on weekends to host free basic mechanics workshops for veterans. The idea was to teach practical skills that could lead to employment opportunities while also providing a space for veterans to connect and support each other. To his surprise and delight, the manager was enthusiastic about the idea. She saw it as an opportunity for positive community engagement and agreed to sponsor the initiative. With the green light given, Jack threw himself into planning the workshops. The first session was a mix of nervousness and excitement. Jack had prepared a basic curriculum covering oil changes, tire rotations, and simple diagnostics. As veterans of all ages began to file into the makeshift classroom, Jack felt a familiar flutter in his stomach, the same feeling he used to get before a mission. He began the workshop by sharing his own story, creating an immediate connection with the group. As he guided them through the basics of car maintenance, Jack was struck by the camaraderie that quickly developed. Veterans from different eras shared stories, traded jokes, and helped each other grasp the concepts. One participant, a young woman named Rachel, who had served as a mechanic in the Army, approached Jack after the session. She expressed interest in helping with future workshops, offering to share her expertise on more advanced repairs. Jack was thrilled. This was exactly the kind of peer support and skill sharing he had hoped to foster. As the weeks went by, the workshops grew in popularity. Veterans brought in their own vehicles for hands-on practice, turning the sessions into impromptu repair clinics. The atmosphere was one of mutual support and shared purpose. For many participants, it was the first time since leaving the service that they felt truly understood and valued. Jack also noticed a change in himself. The more he taught, the more confident he became. He found joy in passing on his knowledge and seeing the spark of understanding in his students' eyes. Moreover, the workshops became a place where veterans could discuss their challenges and successes in a supportive environment. One Saturday, as Jack was demonstrating how to replace brake pads, he was reminded of a day in Afghanistan when he and his unit had to repair their vehicle under enemy fire. He realized that the skills and resilience they had developed in the military were invaluable assets in civilian life. This realization became a cornerstone of his teaching philosophy, helping veterans recognize and translate their military skills into civilian success. The workshop soon became about more than just mechanics. They evolved into a support network, a place where veterans could find understanding, purpose, and a path forward. For Jack, it was the fulfillment of a promise he had made to himself and to the memory of those who hadn't made it home, to never leave a fellow veteran behind. As Jack's mechanics workshops gained momentum, they began to attract attention beyond the veteran community. Local businesses, inspired by the initiative, started to offer job opportunities to workshop participants. The town's community college reached out to discuss the possibility of creating a formal vocational program for veterans, with Jack as a key advisor. The impact of these efforts rippled through the community. The workshops became a melting pot of experiences, where World War II veterans shared wisdom with those who had served in Afghanistan and Iraq. This intergenerational exchange of knowledge and support was healing for all involved. One Saturday, as Jack was guiding a group through the intricacies of engine repair, he noticed a familiar face in the crowd. It was Sarah, the photographer whose act of kindness had set this whole journey in motion. She had come to document the workshops for a feature in the local newspaper. As their eyes met, both felt a surge of emotion, pride, gratitude, and a shared sense of accomplishment. After the workshop, Sarah interviewed Jack about the program's success. As he spoke about the transformations he had witnessed, veterans finding purpose, building skills, and supporting each other, Jack realized how far he had come from the solitary figure walking miles to a low-wage job. Inspired by the progress and eager to expand their impact, Jack and Sarah brainstormed ideas for a larger event. They envisioned a community fair that would showcase veteran-owned businesses, provide resources for veterans and their families, and educate the public about the challenges and strengths of those who had served. The idea quickly gained traction. Local officials, business owners, and community leaders rallied behind the initiative. Veterans from Jack's workshops volunteered their time and skills to organize the event. The town's Park A, once just a backdrop to Jack's solitary walks, was transformed into a vibrant space of connection and celebration. On the day of the fair, Jack stood at the entrance, overwhelmed by the turnout. Booths lined the pathways, offering everything from job opportunities and educational resources to mental health support and family services. The air was filled with the sound of laughter, music, and the excited chatter of people connecting. A particularly poignant moment came when a group of elementary school children presented a banner they had made, thanking veterans for their service. As Jack watched veterans interact with the children, sharing stories and answering questions, he saw the invisible barriers between military and civilian life beginning to crumble. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, Jack found a quiet moment to reflect. He thought about the long journey from isolation to community, from despair to hope. He realized that in helping others, he had found his own healing. The fair wasn't just an event, it was a testament to the power of compassion, understanding, and the unwavering spirit of those who had served. Looking out over the crowd, veterans, families, and community members all mingling together, Jack felt a profound sense of belonging. The shadows of his past hadn't disappeared, but they no longer defined him. The success of the community fair catapulted Jack into a new role as a spokesperson for veteran issues. His journey from struggling veteran to community leader had caught the attention of national veteran organizations. Soon, Jack found himself invited to speak at a major conference on veteran reintegration in Washington, D.C. As he stood at the podium, looking out over a sea of faces, some in uniform, others in suits, all united by their commitment to supporting veterans, Jack felt a mix of nervousness and determination. He began his speech by sharing a deeply personal experience from his darkest days after returning from Afghanistan. "There was a night," Jack began, his voice steady but thick with emotion, "when I stood on the edge of a bridge, wondering if the world would be better off without me. What stopped me wasn't fear of death. It was the memory of the brothers and sisters I'd lost in combat. I realized that living, really living, was the best way to honor their sacrifice." A hush fell over the audience as Jack's words sank in. He went on to describe how small acts of kindness, like Sarah's initial outreach, can be the lifeline a struggling veteran needs. He spoke about the power of community, the importance of purpose, and the untapped potential of veterans as community leaders and changemakers. As Jack concluded his speech, the room erupted in a standing ovation. But more importantly, he saw tears in the eyes of many attendees and nods of understanding from fellow veterans. He had given voice to experiences many had felt but struggled to articulate. After the conference, a young veteran approached Jack. With tears in his eyes, he confessed that he had been contemplating suicide, but that Jack's words had given him hope. In that moment, Jack realized the true impact of his journey. It wasn't just about his own healing, but about creating a ripple effect of hope and support throughout the veteran community. Energized by the conference, Jack returned home with new ideas and connections. He began collaborating with national organizations to implement programs similar to his mechanics workshops in other cities. His story was featured in national media, bringing attention to the challenges faced by veterans and the power of community-based solutions. As his influence grew, Jack never forgot the importance of individual connections. He continued to mentor young veterans, always reminding them that their struggles didn't define them, but their resilience and potential to help others did. With each life he touched, Jack felt he was honoring the memory of those who hadn't made it home, turning his survival into a mission of service. As Jack's initiatives gained national recognition, he began receiving letters from veterans across the country who had been inspired by his story. Each letter was a testament to the power of shared experiences and the importance of visible role models in the veteran community. One day, a letter arrived that stopped Jack in his tracks. It was from a Marine he had served with in Afghanistan, someone he had lost touch with after their deployment. The Marine wrote about his own struggles with PTSD and how he had been on the brink of giving up when he saw Jack's story on the news. Inspired by Jack's journey, he had sought help and was now on his own path to recovery. Moved by this reconnection, Jack decided to organize a reunion for his old unit. As he reached out to his former comrades, he discovered that many were fighting their own battles with PTSD, unemployment, and substance abuse. The reunion became more than just a chance to reminisce. It was an opportunity to support each other and share resources. The day of the reunion arrived, and Jack found himself surrounded by familiar faces, each bearing the invisible scars of their shared experiences. As they talked, laughed, and sometimes cried together, Jack realized that his journey had come full circle. The support he had received from his community had enabled him to now support his brothers and sisters in arms. During the reunion, Jack introduced his old comrades to Sarah, whose simple act of kindness had set everything in motion. As Sarah listened to the veterans share their stories, she was struck by how much impact her small gesture had made. It reinforced her belief in the power of human connection and inspired her to continue using her photography to tell the stories of those often overlooked by society. The reunion also sparked a new idea for Jack. He realized that many veterans struggled to articulate their experiences to their families and friends, creating a barrier to understanding and support. With Sarah's help, he began planning a photo essay project that would visually represent the veteran experience, from the challenges of reintegration to the triumphs of overcoming adversity. As word of the project spread, veterans from all eras volunteered to participate. Each photo session became a therapeutic experience, allowing veterans to express visually what they struggled to say in words. The resulting exhibition, hosted at a prominent gallery in town, drew visitors from across the state and sparked important conversations about veteran support and mental health. One of the most powerful moments came when Emily, the young girl who had sent Jack money from her piggy bank years ago, visited the exhibition with her veteran grandfather. Now, a teenager, Emily was moved to tears by the stories captured in the photographs. Her grandfather, who had always been reluctant to speak about his own service, found himself opening up for the first time, inspired by the courage of those who had shared their stories. As Jack watched Emily and her grandfather move through the exhibition, hand in hand, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He realized that his journey wasn't just about helping veterans, it was about bridging the gap between veterans and civilians, fostering understanding, and creating a community where everyone could feel seen and supported. As Jack's initiatives continued to grow and impact lives, he found himself reflecting on the long journey that had brought him to this point. The scared, angry veteran who once walked 20 miles a day to a low-wage job seemed like a different person now. Yet Jack knew that version of himself was still a part of him, a reminder of how far he'd come and how many others still needed help. One sunny afternoon, as Jack was preparing for another community event, he received an unexpected visitor. It was Mike, the young Army veteran he had mentored years ago when he first started his support group. Mike wasn't alone. He was accompanied by a group of young veterans, each with a look of determination in their eyes. Mike explained that inspired by Jack's mentorship, he and his friends had started their own support initiative in a neighboring town. They had come to seek Jack's advice on expanding their program and to show him the impact his mentorship had created. As Jack listened to their plans and aspirations, he felt a surge of emotion. This was more than he had ever hoped for, not just helping individual veterans, but inspiring them to become leaders and helpers in their own right. He realized he was witnessing the beginning of a self-perpetuating cycle of support and hope. The meeting with Mike and his group sparked a new phase in Jack's journey. He began to focus on leadership training for veterans, with veterans of all ages coming to learn, share, and plan for the future. Sarah, who had remained a constant friend and supporter throughout Jack's journey, suggested documenting this new chapter. Together, they created a documentary series showcasing veteran-led initiatives across the country. The series not only highlighted the challenges faced by veterans, but also their incredible resilience and capacity for leadership and community building. As the years passed, Jack's hair began to gray, but his passion for helping fellow veterans never dimmed. He was invited to speak at military bases, preparing active duty service members for the transition to civilian life. His message was always one of hope, resilience, and the importance of community. The warehouse where it all began was filled with veterans whose lives had been touched by the program. Some had gone on to start successful businesses. Others had become counselors or advocates. All carried with them the spirit of mutual support and understanding that Jack had fostered. During the reunion, Jack was surprised with a special honor. The town announced that the community center, where many veteran programs were now housed, would be renamed the Jack Thompson Veterans Support Center. As he stood before the crowd, humbled by the recognition, Jack felt the weight of the dog tags he still wore around his neck, a constant reminder of where he had come from and the brothers and sisters he had lost. In his speech, Jack emphasized that this honor belonged not just to him, but to every veteran who had found the courage to seek help, to offer help, and to keep moving forward. He spoke of the first day he met Sarah, of the young girl who had emptied her piggy bank, of Mike and his group of young leaders. Each small act of kindness, each moment of understanding, had contributed to building this legacy of hope. As the sun set on the reunion, casting a warm glow over the gathered crowd, Jack looked out at the faces of his fellow veterans, young and old, from different conflicts and eras, all united in their shared experience and commitment to supporting one another. He saw in their eyes the same spark of hope that had been ignited in him years ago. Jack realized that his journey had never really been about him alone. It was about the unbreakable bond between those who have served, the power of community to heal wounds, both visible and invisible eye, and the ripple effect that one person's actions can have on countless lives. As the evening wound down, with laughter and conversation filling the air, Jack felt a deep sense of peace. The shadows of his past would always be a part of him, but they no longer defined him. Instead, they had become the foundation upon which he had built a legacy of hope, resilience, and unwavering support for his fellow veterans. And as he looked towards the future, Jack knew that this legacy would continue to grow, touching lives and inspiring hope for generations to come. The journey that had begun with a solitary walk and an act of kindness had become a movement, a testament to the enduring spirit of those who serve and the communities that support them.
Disclaimer: this channel does not support or tolerate any form of discrimination, racism, prejudice, or violation of human rights. The stories presented here are original and created by the author with the aim of promoting reflection, awareness, and dialogue. All content is developed with respect for diversity and the dignity of all people.